Chapter 1. The Festive Invitation. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, the sort of grey December afternoon when London seems to forget the sun exists. Hercule Poirot sat in his immaculate flat on Whitehaven Mansions. A cup of thick, sweet chocolate shorte balanced on the arm of his chair, his moustaches waxed to twin points of military precision. The postman's knock had been sharp, 3 raps, no more, and the envelope that slid beneath the door was heavy cream stock, sealed with crimson wax impressed by a holly leaf. Poirot lifted it with the delicacy he reserved for unexploded ordnance. The handwriting on the front was bold, almost theatrical. Monsieur Hercule Poirot, Whitehaven Mansions, London. No return address, only the faint scent of pine needles and something metallic beneath. He slit the seal with a silver letter opener shaped like a miniature sword. Inside lay a single card, edges gilt, the message printed in festive scarlet ink. You are cordially summoned to Frostmere Manor, 23rd and 26th of December, for a Christmas house party unlike any other. Come prepared for snow, secrets and surprises. A carriage will collect you from King's Cross, Platform 9, 22nd December, 3:17 p.m. precisely. Sir Reginald Ashcombe, Bart. Beneath the signature, someone had added in hurried pencil, Bring your little grey cells. They will be needed. Poirot's eyebrows performed their famous assent. Tiens, he murmured. A summons, not an invitation. Curious. He turned the card over. On the reverse, embossed in gold, was a tiny Christmas stocking, stitched so finely that the wool seemed almost real, dangling from an invisible nail. A single red bead glinted where a toe should be. He rang for George, his valet, who appeared with the silent efficiency of well-oiled clockwork. "George, what do you make of this?" Poirot flicked the card across the blotter. George adjusted his spectacles. "Looks like one of them country house weekends, sir. Rich folk, too much port, charades till dawn, only—" He paused, frowning at the stocking. "That bead. Looks like a drop of blood, if you don't mind me saying." "Précisément." Poirot tapped the card with a manicured nail. "Sir Reginald Ashcombe. The name is not unknown to me. Armaments millionaire, knighted after the war, retired to breed prize Herefords, and one hears to nurse certain regrets." He rose, pacing the Persian rug in 3 measured steps and back. "A carriage at Platform 9. Platform 9. How droll! And the date, the eve of Christmas." One does not interrupt Poirot's preparations for Noel without excellent reason. George cleared his throat. "Will you go, sir?" Poirot halted before the window. Outside, the Thames lay slate-grey, under a sky the colour of wet cement. Somewhere beyond the city, snow was falling on ancient stone and alder sins. He felt the familiar prickle at the base of his skull, the sensation that told him a puzzle of exquisite complexity was uncoiling. "Naturally I shall go," he said, spinning on his heel. "But first, George, the Bradshaw, then the valise, my warmest overcoat, the grey spats, the muffler of cashmere, and the little revolver, the one with the mother-of-pearl handle. One never knows when a stocking may prove explosive." By evening, Poirot had unearthed what Scotland Yard gossip and the who's who could tell him. Frostmere Manor stood on the North York moors, 12 miles from the nearest village, reachable only by a private spur of railway built in 1897 for the Ashcombe Colliery. Sir Reginald, 62, widower, no children, had retreated there after a scandal involving forged blueprints and a munitions contract. The current house party, according to the court circular, included Lady Sylvia Ashcombe, his sister-in-law, a former actress famed for the Baron's Revenge. Captain Rupert Hale, late of the Guards, rumoured engaged to Sir Reginald's ward. Miss Clarissa Vale, the ward in question, heiress to a soap fortune. Dr. Felix Morrow, physician and spiritualist, author of Messages from the Mist. Mrs. Beatrice Finch, housekeeper since Sir Reginald was in nappies. Mr. Tobias Wren, London solicitor, bearer of sealed documents. Miss Daphne Snow, debutante and amateur photographer. The Reverend Mr. Peregrine Goodbody, local vicar, collector of medieval relics. 8 guests plus host and staff. A neat little constellation for murder, Poirot reflected, should murder choose to orbit. He spent the night in delicious anticipation, arranging his toiletries in symmetrical rows, polishing his shoes until they reflected the gaslight like obsidian. At 2 a.m., he permitted himself one small deviation. He opened the false bottom of his dispatch case and removed a slim dossier marked Ashcombe, Confidential. Inside lay a photograph clipped from the Illustrated London News, 1916, Sir Reginald, younger, standing beside a prototype howitzer. Behind him, half-shadowed, a woman in nurse's uniform, face obscured, but the posture unmistakable. Poirot's lips curved. Eh bien, we meet again, mon fantôme. At King's Cross the following afternoon, the platform was a chaos of tartan travelling rugs and shrieking children. Poirot, immaculate in Chesterfield coat and Homburg, allowed a porter to carry his single valise. Precisely at 3:17, a whistle shrilled. A private coach, midnight blue, picked out in gold, glided alongside. The crest on the door was the same holly leaf from the wax seal. A conductor in bottle green livery bowed. "Monsieur Poirot, this way, if you please." Inside, the carriage was a cocoon of mahogany and crimson velvet. A coal stove glowed, crystal decanters winked on a sideboard. Only one other passenger, a young woman in a sable coat, auburn hair escaping her cloche hat like sparks. She looked up from a copy of Vogue and smiled with calculated charm. "Mr. Poirot, I presume? Clarissa Vale. Uncle Reggie said you'd be punctual." Her voice was light, but her eyes, green, watchful, catalogued him the way a jeweller weighs a diamond. "Enchanté, mademoiselle." Poirot inclined his head. "Your guardian is a man of surprises." "Reggie adores surprises." She folded the magazine, especially the lethal kind. The train lurched. Through the window, London dissolved into frost-laced fields. Poirot settled opposite her, hands folded over the head of his cane. "Tell me, Miss Vale," he said pleasantly, "why does a baronet summon the continent's greatest detective to a Christmas party?" Clarissa's laugh was silver bells over broken glass. "Because someone keeps sending him stockings filled with threats. And because last year, on Christmas morning, his favourite hunter was found in the stables, with a candy cane driven through its heart." Poirot's moustache twitched. A candy cane. How festive! The train gathered speed, hurtling north into gathering dusk. In the stove, coals settled with a sigh. Outside, the first flakes of snow began to fall, slow, deliberate, as though the sky itself was stitching a shroud. Poirot closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the wheels lull him. Somewhere ahead, Frostmere Manor waited under its blanket of white. Somewhere in its chimneys and corridors, a killer was hanging stockings by the fire with care. And Hercule Poirot, for the first time in years, felt the old exquisite thrill. The game, as they say, was afoot. Chapter 2. Arrival in the snow. The private coach detached itself from the main line at a junction so obscure it possessed neither name nor platform, only a single oil lamp swaying in the wind. A brass plate on the signal box read, "Ashcombe Spur, Private." The engine exhaled a dragon sigh of steam, then rolled forward into darkness, stitched with snow. Poirot peered through the frost-rimed window. Beyond the glass, the moors stretched like a bolt of black velvet, unrolled beneath a seamstress moon. Pines stood in ragged ranks, their branches laden white, and every so often a frozen beck glinted like a shard of mirror dropped by a careless god. Clarissa Vale had fallen asleep opposite him. Magazine slid to the carpet. Sable coat slipped from one shoulder. In repose, her face lost its brittle sparkle. She looked younger, almost vulnerable. Poirot studied the faint bruise of exhaustion beneath her eyes and filed it away with the meticulous care of a lepidopterist pinning a new specimen. The train slowed. A station, no more than a wooden shelter and a hand-painted sign, materialized out of the blizzard. Frostmere halt. The engine braked with a shriek of iron on iron. Snowflakes whirled through the open door like confetti at a funeral. A figure waited on the platform, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a many-caped greatcoat the colour of claret. A lantern in his gloved hand threw a circle of gold across the drifts. As Poirot descended, the man strode forward, boots crunching. "Poirot! By Jove, you're a sight for frost-bitten eyes." The voice was parade-ground hearty, but the eyes, pale blue, bloodshot, were wary. Sir Reginald Ashcombe's handshake could have cracked walnuts. Devilish weather, what? Still, nothing like a white Christmas to put one in the mood for, well, whatever it is we're in the mood for. Murder, perhaps, Poirot suggested mildly. Sir Reginald's laugh boomed, then died abruptly. "Touché, old man. Come along, the carriage is this way." A sleigh awaited, not the quaint Victorian affair of postcards, but a sleek modern affair on runners, lacquered crimson, drawn by two black Percherons whose breath plumed silver. A coachman in fur hat touched his whip to the brim in salute. Poirot was handed up, Clarissa followed yawning, and Sir Reginald climbed in last, pulling fur robes over their knees. The horses lunged forward. Bells on their harness sang a minor carillon. The track wound upward between dry stone walls half buried in snow, past abandoned mine workings where pit wheels stood frozen like the skeletons of prehistoric beasts. Poirot inhaled air sharp enough to cut crystal. It tasted of pine resin, coal smoke, and something older, iron, perhaps, or blood. Conversation was impossible above the hiss of runners and the wind's keen. Sir Reginald shouted fragments. "Built by my grandfather. Colliery closed in 23. Clarissa's first Christmas without her father." The girl stared straight ahead, gloved hands clenched in her lap. After 20 minutes the manor appeared, a jagged silhouette against the sky, windows ablaze. Frostmere was Elizabethan at its core, but later Ashcombes had grafted on Gothic turrets, Regency balconies, even a squat Victorian clock tower whose hands stood forever at midnight. Snow slid from the eaves in soft avalanches. A string of coloured bulbs, newfangled electric ones, outlined the porte cochere, their glow reflected in the ice on the gravel. Footmen in scarlet livery materialized to take luggage. Poirot surrendered his valise with reluctance. George had packed it with the precision of a field surgeon. Inside the entrance hall, warmth rolled over him like a tide. A fire roared in a hearth carved from a single block of Yorkshire gritstone. Above it hung a tapestry of the Nativity, so faded that the Virgin's face had become a pale oval of mystery. Guests milled beneath a chandelier fashioned from stag antlers. Poirot catalogued them instantly. Lady Sylvia Ashcombe, regal in emerald velvet, diamonds flashing at throat and ears, cigarette holder poised like a sceptre. Captain Rupert Hale, ramrod straight, moustache trimmed to regulation width, eyes the colour of wet slate. Dr. Felix Morrow, thin as a stiletto, black coat buttoned to the chin, carrying a leather case that might have held instruments or incantations. Mrs. Beatrice Finch, housekeeper, starched apron crackling, keys jangling at her waist like a jailer's. Mr. Tobias Wren, solicitor, pince-nez, glinting, clutching a dispatch box chained to his wrist. Miss Daphne Snow, camera slung around her neck, cheeks pink from cold, laughing at something the Reverend Peregrine Goodbody whispered, his dog collar askew, port wine birthmark staining his left cheek. Sir Reginald clapped for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honour, Monsieur Hercule Poirot." A ripple of curiosity. Lady Sylvia exhaled smoke through aristocratic nostrils. "The detective? How deliciously macabre!" Poirot bowed. "One does one's best to be entertaining, madame." Clarissa had vanished. Up the grand staircase, presumably. Sir Reginald steered Poirot toward the fire. "Drink? Mulled claret, sloe gin, or something stronger. You'll need fortifying. The central heating is temperamental, and the east wing is positively glacial." "Chocolat chaud, if possible," Poirot said, with a whisper of vanilla. Mrs. Finch materialized, as though conjured. "This way, sir. Cook laid in real Belgian chocolate especially." The procession moved through an archway into a smaller parlour panelled in dark oak. A Christmas tree soared to the ceiling, hung with glass icicles and tiny wax candles already lit. Real flames, Poirot noted, with a purse of lips. Beneath it, presents wrapped in tartan and gold. And hanging from the mantelpiece, 9 Christmas stockings, hemp, hand-knitted, each embroidered with a guest's initials in scarlet wool. Poirot's gaze sharpened. The stocking marked H.P. bulged promisingly. He resisted the urge to investigate. Instead, he accepted a porcelain cup from Mrs. Finch. The chocolate was perfection. Velvet, with a breath of nutmeg. Sir Reginald raised his glass. "To absent friends and to secrets kept." Glasses clinked. Outside, the wind moaned around the eaves like a lost soul. Poirot sipped, watching reflections in the polished surface of a grandfather clock. At 6:47 p.m. precisely, the minute hand jerked forward. Somewhere in the house, another clock answered with a different chime, half a tone flat. Discordant, deliberate, Captain Hale leaned close. Sir Reginald mentioned threats. "Stockings, wasn't it? Bit of a joke, I dare say." "Jokes," Poirot murmured, "have a habit of turning serious when least expected." Dinner was announced. Pheasant with chestnut stuffing, flaming plum pudding, a Yule log crackling in the dining hall. Poirot took his place between Lady Sylvia and Miss Snow. Conversation glittered. Gossip from the London season, the unreliability of maids, the price of coal. Beneath it ran darker currents. Hale's clipped references to debts of honour. Dr. Morrow's cryptic remarks about messages from beyond the veil. The Reverend's sudden silence when the word inheritance was spoken. At 10:15, coffee was served in the library. Poirot excused himself, pleading travel fatigue. Mrs. Finch conducted him up a secondary staircase lit by sconces shaped like torches. His room was in Chistoiset, the west wing, tapestries of hunting scenes, a 4-poster bed swagged in burgundy damask, a fire already laid. On the counterpane lay a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. No card. Poirot approached warily, sniffed, nothing, then slit the string with his penknife. Inside, a single Christmas stocking, identical to those downstairs, but this one was soaked through with something dark and viscous. He lifted it to the lamplight. The stain was crimson, still wet, blood. From the toe protruded a slip of paper. Poirot unfolded it with tweezers from his travelling case. Written in block capitals, the ink slightly blurred. 1 down, 8 to go. Merry Christmas, Monsieur Poirot. He turned to the window. Snow lashed the panes. Beyond, the moors were a white void. Somewhere in the house, a door closed with the finality of a coffin lid. Poirot locked his door, checked the revolver in its chamois holster, and placed the stocking inside a clean handkerchief. Then he sat in the armchair, hands steepled, and allowed the little grey cells their first gallop across the frozen landscape of Frostmere Manor. Outside, the wind rose to a howl. The hunt, he reflected, had well and truly begun. Chapter 3. The First Stocking Surprise. The house woke to a sky the colour of tarnished pewter, and a silence, not birdsong, but the low, mournful tolling of the chapel bell. 1 stroke, 2, then silence, as though the bronze tongue had been cut out mid-breath. Poirot was already dressed. Charcoal suit, waistcoat of dove-grey, tie pinned with a pearl the size of a wren's egg, when Mrs. Finch's knock came at 6:42 a.m. precisely. Her face, usually starched as her apron, was the shade of yesterday's porridge. "Sir, you're wanted in the entrance hall. It's Sir Reginald." Poirot's moustache bristled. "He is unwell. He's—" The housekeeper's throat worked. "He's hanging, sir, from the chandelier in his stocking." The words struck Poirot like a slap of cold water. He seized his notebook and followed her at a trot, patent leather shoes slipping on the runner. Servants clustered at the foot of the grand staircase, maids clutching one another, footmen pale beneath their powder. Someone had lit every sconce. The hall blazed like a theatre before the curtain rises. Sir Reginald Ashcombe dangled above the checkerboard marble. Toes pointed in crimson slippers embroidered with his initials. A thick red stocking, identical to those on the parlour mantel, was knotted tight around his neck, the wool stretched to a rope. The other end was looped over one of the chandelier's iron arms. His face was congested purple, tongue protruding like a grotesque party favour. But it was the eyes that froze Poirot's blood. Wide, bulging, fixed on the front door, as though the last thing Sir Reginald had seen was his own reflection in the glass. Captain Hale stood beneath the body, arms folded, jaw clenched so hard the muscles jumped. "Cut him down, for God's sake," he barked. A footman produced a pair of silver grape shears. Another climbed onto the balustrade. The stocking parted with a soft rip. Sir Reginald's corpse dropped into waiting arms with the limp heaviness of a tailor's dummy. Poirot knelt. Rigour was absent. The body was still warm. Time of death, between 4 and 5 a.m. He noted the angle of the neck, snapped clean, and the faint bruising beneath the wool, thumbprints deep and deliberate. Not suicide, then. Murder by garrote, the stocking twisted from behind. Lady Sylvia appeared at the top of the stairs in a peach silk dressing gown, hair in pins. She took one look, pressed a lace handkerchief to her lips, and descended with the stately calm of a battleship entering harbour. "Reggie always did have a flair for the dramatic," she said, voice brittle, "though I'd have preferred Macbeth." Dr. Morrow pushed through the knot of guests, black bag swinging. He knelt, pressed 2 fingers to the carotid, then straightened. "Dead 3 hours, give or take. Strangulation. The stocking was the weapon, no ligature beneath. Curious choice. Wool stretches, requires considerable force." "Force and height," Poirot murmured. The chandelier hung 12 feet above the floor. "Our killer is tall, or ingenious." Clarissa Vale drifted in, barefoot, a man's dressing gown clutched around her. Her gaze flicked from the body to Poirot, unreadable. Uncle Reggie kept sleeping pills in the library, said the house gave him nightmares. She shivered. Looks like the nightmare's won. Poirot's eyes swept the hall. The front door was bolted from within. The windows latched. Snow had drifted against the lower panes, no footprints. The murderer had not entered or left by conventional means. He turned to Mrs. Finch. "The stocking. Where are the others?" "In the parlour, sir. All 9, no, 8 now." Her voice cracked. "Sir Reginald's is missing from the mantel." Poirot strode to the parlour. The Christmas tree still twinkled, candles guttering in their clips. 8 stockings remained, swaying gently as though an unseen hand had brushed them. The one embroidered R.A. was gone. In its place, a dark stain on the stone hearth, blood already browning. He examined the remaining stockings. Each bulged slightly. With tweezers, he extracted a slip of paper from the toe of CV. "Clarissa's. Tick-tock, little heiress. Your turn next." The ink was the same crimson as the invitation. Poirot pocketed the note, then checked the others. L.S., Lady Sylvia, contained a single white feather. R.H., Captain Hale, held a spent cartridge case. Jackie 3 caliber. F.M., Dr. Morrow, a phial of colourless liquid. The rest were empty save for lumps of coal. A pattern, Poirot thought. Threats tailored to each guest. Footsteps behind him, Captain Hale, eyes red-rimmed. "I've telephoned the village. Lines are down. Storm took the wires. We're cut off till the ploughs come. Maybe tomorrow." "Convenient," Poirot said dryly. Hale's jaw worked. "Look here, Poirot. Reggie was my friend. Served together at Passchendaele. If someone in this house—" He broke off, staring at the empty space on the mantel. "That stocking was there at midnight. I saw it when I banked the fire." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "You were the last to retire?" "After the Reverend. Goodbody wanted a nightcap. Said he couldn't sleep with the wind. We parted in the corridor at 12:30. Poirot made a note. He moved to the body, now laid on a settle. Sir Reginald's slippers had left damp prints on the marble, melted snow. Yet the hall had been warm. The prints should have dried, unless the baronet had been outside recently. He examined the soles, traces of grit, coal dust, and something green, pine needles. The pine forest lay 1/2 mile from the house. Sir Reginald had been lured outdoors in the small hours, then brought back to die beneath his own chandelier. Mrs. Finch returned with tea on a silver tray, hands trembling so violently the cups rattled. "Cook's in hysterics, sir. Says the Yule log went out at 4, though she'd banked it high. And the scullery maid swears she heard sleigh bells at 3, coming from the east wing." "Sleigh bells," Poirot repeated, "yet the sleigh is stabled." He dispatched Hale to check the stables, Mrs. Finch to gather the staff in the servants' hall. Then he climbed the main staircase, counting steps. At the landing he paused. A faint draught curled from beneath a tapestry, depicting the martyrdom of St. Sebastian. He lifted the heavy fabric. Behind it, a narrow door, unlocked. The passage beyond was a servants' corridor, narrow and unheated. Footprints in the dust. 2 sets, one large, booted, the other smaller, bare feet. Clarissa's! They led to a baize door that opened onto the east wing. Poirot followed. The corridor here was grander, lined with ancestors in cracked oils. At the far end, a window stood ajar. Snow had blown across the sill, half covering a single red woolen thread caught on the latch. He leaned out. Below, a drift piled against the wall. In it, the clear imprint of a body. Someone had jumped or been pushed, then walked away. The tracks led toward the stables. Poirot closed the window. His breath fogged the glass. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 7. He counted the chimes, 7, 8, 9, then silence. Another discordant clock, half a tone flat. The same as last night. He returned to the hall. Dr. Morrow was closing his bag. "I've given Lady Sylvia a sedative. The rest are in the morning room. Shock, mostly, though Miss Snow is being sick in the cloakroom." Poirot nodded. "Doctor, the phial in your stocking, what is it?" Morrow's eyes flickered. "Laudanum, standard dose. I keep it for patients." "Yet you are not Sir Reginald's physician." "No, I was a guest." The doctor's fingers drummed. "The bag. Reggie consulted me privately. Night terrors. Said he saw his wife in the corridors, dead these 20 years. Poirot filed that away. He addressed the assembled guests. "Mesdames et messieurs, we are isolated. A murderer walks among us. Until the authorities arrive, I, Hercule Poirot, will investigate. You will remain in pairs at all times. No one enters the East Wing alone. Compris?" Lady Sylvia laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "You'll solve it before breakfast, I suppose? Before luncheon, madame, if the little grey cells are kind." He dispatched them to dress, then knelt by the chandelier. The iron arm from which Sir Reginald had hung was bent slightly. Wait and struggle. On the floor beneath, a single red bead, the same as on his invitation. He pocketed it. In the library, he found Clarissa curled in a wing chair, knees to chin. "He promised me the manor," she whispered. "Said it would be mine when he died. Now it's mine, and I wish it weren't." Poirot sat opposite. "Tell me about the sleeping pills." "He took 2 every night. Kept them in a silver box on the desk." She pointed. The box lay open, empty. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Drugged, lured outside, garroted, then staged as suicide. A killer who enjoyed theatre. He stood. "Come, we search Sir Reginald's room." They climbed the east staircase. The baronet's suite was chaos. Drawers upended, papers strewn. On the blotter, a half-written letter. "If I die, look to the stockings. The truth is stitched." The sentence ended in a blot. Ink still wet. Poirot opened the wardrobe. Inside, a row of identical red stockings, 6, 7, 8, all empty. On the floor, a spool of scarlet wool and a darning needle. Clarissa gasped. He was knitting them himself. Said it calmed him. Poirot lifted the needle. A single strand of wool clung to the eye, dark with dried blood. From the corridor came a scream. "Hi, animal!" They ran. In the east wing, Miss Snow stood before a door, camera dangling. "It's Dr. Morrow," she sobbed. "He's locked himself in the old nursery, and there's blood under the door." Poirot tried the handle. Locked. He put his shoulder to it, solid oak. From within, a low moaning. "Stand back!" He drew his revolver, aimed at the lock, and fired. The report echoed like a cannon. The door swung inward. Dr. Morrow lay on the nursery floor, wrists slashed, blood pooling beneath a rocking horse, with one painted eye missing. In his right hand, a shard of mirror. On the wall above, scrawled in crimson, 2 down. But the doctor's chest rose, shallow, erratic. He was alive. Poirot knelt, staunching the wounds with his handkerchief. Morrow's eyes fluttered. "Not me," he rasped. "The stocking. It moved on its own." Then he fainted. Poirot looked up. On the nursery mantel, a 10th stocking, unembroidered, dripped slow, steady drops into the grate. Inside, something shifted. He approached, revolver ready. With the poker, he hooked the stocking down. It was heavy, sodden. He turned it out. A human heart, still warm, wrapped in a scrap of paper. 7 more. The game continues. Snow battered the nursery window. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 8, then 9, then stopped. Poirot stared at the heart, then at the unconscious doctor, then at the blood-smeared wall. The Christmas stocking killer had claimed his first victim and issued a challenge. The manor was a chessboard, and Poirot had just been promoted to pawn. Chapter 4. Suspects by the Fireplace. The morning room had become an interrogation chamber by accident. Someone had drawn the crimson curtains against the storm. The electric bulbs, wired only last year, buzzed like trapped wasps. A single log crackled in the grate, throwing shadows that writhed across the panelling like guilty secrets trying to escape. Poirot stood with his back to the fire, small and immaculate, the revolver now tucked discreetly beneath his waistcoat. 8 stockings, 8 survivors, hung from the picture rail on brass hooks Mrs. Finch had hammered in with shaking hands. Each guest had been ordered to bring theirs. Each had obeyed, though Lady Sylvia's was clutched like a talisman, and Captain Hale's bulged ominously with the spent cartridge. Dr. Morrow lay upstairs under sedation, wrists swathed in lint. The heart in the nursery had been wrapped in oilskin and locked in Sir Reginald's gun cabinet, Poirot's improvised morgue. The local constable, when he finally arrived, would find evidence preserved with Belgian thoroughness. For now, the manor was a snowbound island, and Poirot its reluctant governor. He surveyed the semicircle of chairs. 8 faces, 8 stockings, 8 possible motives. The storm had sealed them in until at least tomorrow. The killer knew it and was playing for time, or for terror. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, voice soft as falling ash, we begin with facts. Sir Reginald was drugged, lured outside, garroted with his own stocking, and hanged. Dr. Morrow was slashed with a mirror shard, yet the angle suggests another hand guided his. Someone wishes us to believe in suicide. Someone delights in theatre. He tapped the mantel. These stockings are the programme. Let us read it together. He moved to Lady Sylvia first. She had changed into morning black, diamonds replaced by jet. The white feather from her stocking lay on her lap like a surrender flag. Madame, you were Sir Reginald's sister-in-law. Tell me of the family. Lady Sylvia lit a cigarette with a hand that did not tremble. Reggie married my sister Eleanor in 1919. She died in the 22 influenza, left him childless and guilt-ridden. He blamed himself for bringing her north. The manor's damp, you see. She exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. After that he became eccentric. Collected relics, funded séances, paid Dr. Morrow a king's ransom to contact Eleanor. Poirot's eyes flicked to the doctor's empty chair. And the feather? A private joke. Eleanor kept pigeons. Reggie swore one returned every Christmas Eve. White, always white, tapping at the library window. He called it her ghost. Her smile was thin. Last night I heard tapping, thought it was the storm. Poirot made a note. Tap 2312, library window. Next, Captain Hale. The soldier sat ramrod straight, the cartridge case turning between his fingers like a worry bead. Captain, you served with Sir Reginald? Passchendaele. He saved my life, dragged me from a crater under fire, owed him everything. Hale's voice was clipped. After the war, he lent me money, never asked for it back, said a debt of blood cancelled paper. He glanced at Clarissa. Then the crash came. Investments gone, needed another loan. Reggie was reluctant. Clarissa flushed. He said you gambled it away at Ascot. Hale's jaw worked. He was wrong. Poirot lifted the cartridge. Souvenir. From the trench where he saved me. Kept it as a reminder. Hale met Poirot's gaze. I was in the billiard room until 1. Reverend Goodbody can confirm. The Reverend nodded vigorously, birthmark livid. We played 3 frames. Captain won the last on the black. Poirot turned to Clarissa. She had donned a charcoal skirt and white blouse, schoolgirl severity. The note from her stocking lay folded in her palm. Miss Vale, you are the heiress. Was, she corrected. Uncle Reggie's will leaves everything to me, manor, investments, the colliery shares. But there's a codicil. If I marry without his approval, the estate reverts to a trust for ex-soldiers. Her eyes slid to Hale. He dislikes Rupert's prospects. Poirot's moustache twitched. And the sleeping pills? I saw him take 2 at 11 in the library. He offered me one. Said the house gave him dreams of drowning. I refused. Next, Mr. Tobias Wren. The solicitor's pince-nez flashed as he opened the dispatch box. Inside, a sealed envelope marked Last Will and Testament, Sir R. Ashcombe. Delivered yesterday, Wren said primly, to be opened only in the event of death. But Sir Reginald gave me verbal instructions last week. The codicil Miss Vale mentioned? It was added in November, after Captain Hale's latest request for funds. Hale surged to his feet. You weasel! Sit! Poirot's voice cracked like a whip. Hale subsided, fists clenched. Miss Daphne Snow raised her camera. May I photograph the stockings, Monsieur Poirot? For the record? No. Poirot's refusal was gentle but final. Film can be doctored. Memory, less so. He moved to Mrs. Finch. The housekeeper stood apart, keys jangling. Madam, you have served the family 40 years. Since I was 16, sir. Knew Sir Reginald when he was in short coats. Her eyes brimmed. He was a good man, generous, to the staff. But after Lady Eleanor died, he changed. Started locking doors, counting steps. Said the house was counting back. Poirot's interest sharpened. Counting. Every night at midnight he walked the corridors, tap, tap, tap with his stick. Said he was keeping the ghosts at bay. Poirot recalled the discordant clocks. And the east wing. Closed since 22, Lady Eleanor's rooms. He kept them as she left them. Stockings on the bed, hairbrush on the dresser. Mrs. Finch's voice dropped. Sometimes I'd find the brush moved, or a stocking knotted round the bedpost. The room chilled. Outside the wind screamed around the chimneys. Poirot addressed the Reverend. Monsieur le Curé, you collect relics? Goodbody flushed. Medieval, mostly. A fingerbone of St. Cuthbert, a splinter of the True Cross. Authenticated, of course. He hesitated. Sir Reginald promised me the Manor Chapel for a museum, in return for spiritual services. Seances? The Reverend looked embarrassed. He believed his wife was trapped between worlds. Dr. Morrow facilitated contact. Poirot's gaze swept the room. Last night, who retired when? A chorus. Lady Sylvia, 11:45, library, nightcap with Sir Reginald. Captain Hale and Reverend, 12:30, billiards. Clarissa, 12:15, saw Sir Reginald in library, refused pill. Wren, 11:30, locked documents in study safe. Daphne, 12:45, dark room in the old laundry, developing photographs of the tree, Mrs. Finch, 1:15, checked fires, locked kitchen. Dr. Morrow, 11:30, library with Sir Reginald, administered sleeping draught. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Dr. Morrow gave the pills? Clarissa nodded. Uncle trusted him, said he had steady hands for the veil. Poirot made a note. Morrow, access to drugs. He moved to the stockings. One by one he emptied them onto the table. LS, white feather, already examined. RH, cartridge case, CV, threatening note. TW, a brass key, small, ornate. DS, a photographic negative. When held to the light, a blurred image of the east wing window, something white at the glass. PG, a tiny bone, yellowed, carved with a cross. BF, a sprig of mistletoe, berries crushed, stained red. FM, the laudanum file, now half empty. Poirot lifted the key. This opens? Wren cleared his throat. The estate office safe. Sir Reginald kept duplicate share certificates there. The negative intrigued Poirot. Miss Snow, when was this taken? Midnight. I saw movement at the east window. Thought it was a trick of the moon. Developed it at once. Her voice trembled. The white shape, it looks like a woman. Lady Sylvia stubbed out her cigarette. Eleanor. Silence fell, broken only by the storm. Poirot pocketed the negative and key. We will examine the east wing. Together, Captain Hale, you will carry the revolver. Mrs. Finch, lanterns. They moved in procession, footsteps muffled on the runner. The east corridor was colder. Frost feathered the windows. At Lady Eleanor's door, the key turned with a click. The room beyond was a shrine. Bed turned down, lace nightgown laid out, a stocking, white bridle, draped over the footboard, knotted in a perfect hangman's noose. On the pillow, a single red bead. Clarissa gasped. Hale swore. Poirot's eyes blazed. He crossed to the window. The latch was undone. Snow had blown across the sill. On the floor beneath, damp footprints bare, leading to the wardrobe. Poirot flung it open. Empty, save for a spool of scarlet wool and a darning needle crusted with brown. From the corridor came a scream. Mrs. Finch. She stood before the nursery door, lantern raised. The blood beneath had spread, forming letters. Tick-tock Poirot knelt. The blood was fresh. Someone had returned while they questioned in the morning room. He stood, revolver in hand. The killer is bold. He or she wishes us to chase shadows, but shadows leave footprints. He led them back to the morning room. The fire had burned low. The stockings swayed, though no draught stirred. Poirot faced them. One of you drugged Sir Reginald. One of you lured him with the promise of a ghost. One of you hanged him like a Christmas ornament. And one of you tried to silence Dr. Morrow before he could speak. Lady Sylvia laughed, high and brittle. And which one, little man? Poirot's smile was winter itself. Patience, madame. The stockings have not finished their story. He reached for the mantle and froze. The stocking marked H.P., his own, now bulged grotesquely. A dark stain seeped through the wool. With tweezers he drew out a slip of paper, sodden with blood. Your move, Monsieur Poirot. Check. Beneath the message, a crude chess piece sketched in red. A knight. Poirot looked up. 8 pairs of eyes reflected the dying fire. The game had entered its middle phase, and the board was set for sacrifice. Chapter 5. Midnight Carol Clues. The clock in the great hall had just chimed 11 when Poirot declared the house would sing. Carols, he said, clapping his small hands once, sharp as a starter's pistol. At midnight, in the chapel, everyone attends, no exceptions. The killer hides in silence. Music will flush him like a pheasant. Captain Hale opened his mouth to protest. Curfew, security, the east wing. But Poirot's raised eyebrow silenced him. The revolver now rested in Hale's pocket. The women clutched lanterns as though they were rosaries. Mrs. Finch had produced hymn sheets on thick vellum, edges scalloped like doilies. Someone had inked tiny holly sprigs in the margins. They filed through the cloister that connected house to chapel, boots crunching on salt strewn to melt the ice. Snow hissed against the leaded windows. The storm had redoubled, wind screaming in the gargoyles' stone throats. Inside the chapel, candles guttered in iron sconces. The air smelled of beeswax, damp stone, and something, metallic blood, Poirot thought, carried on clothing. The pews were oak, carved with grotesques. Above the altar, a triptych of the Nativity had been painted in the 15th century. The Virgin's eyes followed them, luminous with centuries of varnish. Sir Reginald's coffin, hastily planed pine, lay on trestles before the rail, lid not yet nailed. Someone had placed a sprig of holly on the breast. Poirot took the harmonium bench. His fingers, surprisingly deft, drew a breathy chord from the reeds. "Venite adoremus," he announced, We begin with O come, all you faithful. They sang, voices thin at first, then stronger. Lady Sylvia's contralto soared. Clarissa's soprano wavered but held. Hale's baritone rumbled like distant artillery. The Reverend Goodbody conducted with a candle, wax dripping onto his cassock. Daphne Snow's camera flashed once, startling everyone, capturing the coffin in a magnesium blaze. Poirot watched faces in the flickering light. Who stood where? Who glanced at whom? He had arranged the pews himself. Suspects in the front, staff behind, himself at the organ with a clear view of the aisle. Verse 2. Something moved in the shadows beyond the Lady Chapel, a flicker of red. Poirot's fingers slipped. A discordant note snarled. Heads turned. Hale's hand went to the revolver. Nothing, Poirot said smoothly. The wind, Solmel. But his eyes had caught it. A stocking, scarlet, dangling from the rood screen like a tongue. They finished the carol. Poirot rose. Now Silent Night, in German, Stille Nacht. It was Sir Reginald's favouritian's favourite. He began the introduction. The chapel fell hushed. Even the storm seemed to listen. Halfway through the first verse, the harmonium gave a grotesque wheeze, air escaping, and the bellows collapsed. Poirot bent to inspect. A fold of scarlet wool had been jammed between the pedals, the toe knotted tight around the treble stop. He extracted it carefully. Inside, a silver thimble, sticky with blood, and a scrap of paper. Silent Night, Holy Night. One verse left to sing. The ink was fresh, the blood warmer. Clarissa stifled a scream. Hale levelled the revolver at the rood screen. Show yourself! Nothing, only the echo of their breathing. Poirot pocketed the note. Continue, in the bleak midwinter. They sang mechanically, voices cracking. Poirot slipped from the bench and moved along the side aisle, hugging the shadows. At the rood screen he paused. The stocking had been tied with a sailor's knot, Hale's specialty, and the wool was damp, as though recently outside. He climbed the narrow spiral to the loft. Dust motes danced in his lantern beam. On the railing, a single red bead, identical to the others, glinted like a ruby. Below, the singers reached the final verse. Poirot descended. The carol ended. Silence rushed in like floodwater. He addressed them from the chancel steps. The killer is among us. He or she plants clues like breadcrumbs, but breadcrumbs lead both ways. He held up the thimble. Lady Sylvia, you sew? Badly, she said. Eleanor was the needlewoman. I prefer bridge. Yet this thimble is monogrammed E.A., Eleanor Ashcombe. He turned it so the light caught the engraving. Taken from her room, perhaps? Mrs. Finch gasped. The east wing was locked. Locks, Poirot said, are suggestions to the determined. He signalled Hale. Together they searched the chapel. Behind the altar, a side door stood ajar, leading to the crypt. Stone steps descended into darkness. The air that rose was colder, grave-sweet. Lanterns lowered, they descended. The crypt was a forest of pillars, coffins stacked like library shelves. At the far end, a newer sarcophagus, marble, lid carved with a weeping angel. Lady Eleanor Ashcombe, 1895–1922. The lid was shifted 6 inches. Snow had drifted through a grill high in the wall, dusting the floor white. Footprints, bare small, led from the sarcophagus to a pile of folded vestments. Poirot lifted a chasuble. Beneath, a child's nightgown, blood-soaked, and another stocking. This one held a lock of auburn hair tied with blue ribbon. Clarissa's hand flew to her own hair, identical shade. That's mine, she whispered. Cut when I was 10. Uncle kept it in a locket. Hale's face was grim. Someone's playing ghost. Poirot knelt. The footprints ended at the wall, then vanished. He ran his fingers along the stone. A panel clicked. A section swung inward on concealed hinges. A tunnel, narrow, hewn through rock, stretched into blackness. Cold air breathed out, carrying the scent of pine and coal smoke. "The old colliery deed," Mrs. Finch breathed, "closed when the mine shut, Sir Reginald bricked it up." "Bricks," Poirot said, "can be removed." He stepped back. "We return above. Seal this door. Tomorrow, daylight, we explore." Back in the chapel, tension crackled. Daphne Snow's camera flashed again, capturing Poirot's face in stark relief. He rounded on her. "Mademoiselle, enough! Film is finite. So is patience," she flushed. "I'm documenting. Document this." He held up the bloodied nightgown. "Someone impersonates a child. Someone knows intimate secrets. Someone wishes us to believe in revenants." Lady Sylvia laughed, a touch hysterically. "Eleanor's ghost, back for Christmas. How festive!" Poirot's eyes were flint. "Ghosts do not bleed, madame, nor do they leave footprints size 5. They processed back to the house. In the cloister, snow had blown through a broken pane, forming a perfect white question mark on the flagstones. Midnight had passed. Christmas Eve was upon them. In the entrance hall, Poirot ordered cocoa. Mrs. Finch bustled off, the guests clustered by the fire subdued. Poirot drew Hale aside. "Captain, the tunnel, does it emerge near the stables?" Hale nodded. "Old coal, shoot, sleigh bells, at 3 a.m. Someone using it." Poirot's mind raced. Drugged baronet, lured via the tunnel, killed outside, body returned through the chapel. The heart in the nursery, whose? He addressed the group. "We retire in pairs. Doors locked. Captain Hale and I will patrol. At dawn, we follow the tunnel." Clarissa approached, eyes huge. "Monsieur, may I show you something? In the darkroom." Poirot followed her to the old laundry, a stone room smelling of chemicals and damp. A red lamp glowed. On the line, photographs dripped into trays. She lifted one with tongs, developed from the negative in my stocking. The image was grainy but unmistakable. The east wing window at midnight. A figure in white, woman or child, face pressed to the glass. One hand raised, palm out. On the wrist, a dark stain like a bracelet. Poirot's breath caught. The slash on Dr. Morrow's wrist. Same position. Clarissa's voice shook. "I took another plate at 12:07. Look." The second image. The same window, now empty. But in the foreground, the nursery rocking horse, visible through an open door, had turned its head toward the camera. In the first photo, it faced away. "Impossible," Poirot murmured. "Unless—" He studied the negative. A faint double exposure, 2 images superimposed. Someone had opened the camera back, advanced the film, and shot again. "Tampered," he said, "but cleverly. The rocking horse was moved between exposures." Clarissa bit her lip. "I locked the darkroom at 1 a.m. When I returned at 6:15, the door was unlocked. Someone was here." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You develop alone?" "Daphne helped mix chemicals. She has a key, says she needs it for her own work." They returned to the hall. Cocoa had arrived. Steam curled from spode cups. Daphne was missing. Hale checked the morning room. Empty. The east wing locked. The chapel sealed. Poirot's voice cut through the chatter. "Miss Snow is gone," panic rippled. Lady Sylvia spilled cocoa on her skirt. "The tunnel! She's gone to the tunnel!" They ran. The chapel crypt was as they left it, panel closed. But on the sarcophagus lid, a fresh stocking lay, toe pointing toward the tunnel like a compass needle. Inside, a flashbulb shattered and a note in block letters, "Exposure kills. Merry Christmas." Poirot stared into the tunnel's mouth. Somewhere in the dark, a camera shutter clicked. Once deliberate. The killer had taken the photographer. And the carols, Poirot reflected grimly, had become a requiem. Chapter 6. The Poisoned Pudding. The kitchen was a cavern of copper and steam, the heart of Frostmere beating beneath layers of snow. At 3:17 a.m. on Christmas Eve, the great range still glowed. Mrs. Finch had banked it high against the cold. Poirot stood on the flagstones in his dressing gown of quilted silk, revolver in one hand, a silver spoon in the other. Around him, the survivors clustered like conspirators at a witch's sabbath. Daphne Snow was missing. The tunnel had swallowed her whole. Poirot had sealed the crypt panel with iron bars pried from a suit of armour. Captain Hale and the Reverend Goodbody now guarded the chapel door, lanterns raised, faces grim. The rest had been summoned here, kitchen, scullery, pantry, to wait for dawn and to keep one another in sight. No one slept. The house itself seemed awake, creaking and sighing like an old ship in heavy seas. Cook, a mountain of a woman named Mrs. Tregellis, had defied hysteria by producing a Christmas pudding the size of a cannonball. It steamed on the deal table, dark and glistening, studded with currants like buckshot. A sprig of holly crowned it, berries blood bright. Poirot tapped the spoon against his palm. "We eat," he declared. "Hunger sharpens the mind, and the pudding, c'est la tradition. But first, we test." He carved a slice. The interior was rich, fragrant with brandy and spice. He lifted a portion to the light, then delicately touched it to his tongue. The others watched, transfixed. "Parfait," he pronounced, "but one must be thorough." He divided the pudding into 9 equal portions, one for each remaining soul, including the absent Daphne. Mrs. Finch passed plates. Clarissa took hers with trembling fingers. Lady Sylvia refused, cigarette trembling between her lips. Poirot watched them eat. The kitchen clock, a plain-faced thing with Roman numerals, ticked toward 4. Outside, the storm had eased to a steady hiss of snow against the windows. At 3:59, Mr. Wren set down his spoon. His face drained of colour. The pince-nez slipped from his nose and clinked onto the plate. "Poison!" he gasped, clutching his throat. "Burning!" He toppled sideways, chair crashing. Poirot was already moving, forcing Wren's jaw open, inserting 2 fingers. The solicitor retched. A fragment of pudding emerged, dark with something crystalline. "Laudanum!" Hale barked. "No!" Poirot sniffed the fragment. "Strychnine, fast-acting. He will live, if we act." Mrs. Finch produced a basin. Cook fetched mustard. Wren vomited violently, then lay gasping, eyes rolling white. Dr. Morrow, summoned from his bed, wrists bandaged, administered an emetic. Within minutes, Wren's pulse steadied. Poirot examined the pudding. A cavity had been hollowed in the centre, filled with a white powder, then sealed with sweat. The holly sprig masked the incision. He lifted the holly. Beneath, a red thread, wool, had been woven through the berries. Another stocking clue. Clarissa whispered, "Daphne's portion, where is it?" Poirot pointed to the 9th plate, untouched. On it, a single red bead. The kitchen door creaked. A draught curled in, carrying the scent of pine and coal smoke. From the pantry beyond came a soft clatter. Metal on stone. Hale raised the revolver. "Stay here." He and Poirot advanced. The pantry was a maze of shelves. Hams in, muslin, jars of pickled walnuts, a sack of flour split open like a gutted fish. On the floor, a silver salver lay overturned. Beside it, a stocking, scarlet, sodden, dripped something viscous onto the tiles. Poirot knelt. The stocking contained a human finger, severed cleanly at the second joint. The nail was painted crimson, Daphne Snow's signature shade. A note pinned to the wool with a darning needle, a digit for a picture. "Exposure is costly," Clarissa screamed. Lady Sylvia fainted, caught by the Reverend. Wren retched again. Poirot wrapped the finger in a clean napkin. The killer escalates. First a heart, now a finger. He wishes us to imagine Miss Snow alive, suffering. He turned to cook. "The pudding, who prepared it?" "Me and the girls, sir. Boiled yesterday, stored in the cool larder. Sir Reginald always had it at 4 a.m. His Christmas ritual. Said it reminded him of trench breakfasts." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the holly?" "From the East Garden. I cut it myself at noon." He examined the sprig. One berry was not a berry. A glass bead, painted red, threaded on wire. He pocketed it. They returned to the kitchen. Wren was propped in a chair, sipping water. "The will," he croaked, "must read it. Sir Reginald's instructions, if anything happened." Poirot nodded. "In the morning room, now." They moved in a tight knot, lanterns bobbing. The morning room fire had burned to embers. Someone had fed it fresh logs. Applewood, sweet-smelling. The stockings still hung from the picture rail, swaying though the windows were shut. Wren unlocked his dispatch box with shaking fingers. The will was thick parchment, sealed in crimson wax. He broke it, scanned the pages, then looked up, eyes wide. "Sir Reginald disinherited Clarissa 3 days ago. The estate passes to a trust for war veterans. Captain Hale is named executor." Hale's face went rigid. "He never said, 'There's more.'" Wren's voice cracked. "A letter to be read aloud if murder occurred." He unfolded a single sheet. "To my guests, if you hear this, I am dead by foul play. The stockings tell the tale. Follow the thread to the attic. There lies the truth of Eleanor's death. Trust no one, especially not the doctor. R.A." Silence fell, broken only by the wind. Poirot's mind raced. Disinheritance, motive for Clarissa, opportunity for Hale. The doctor, why especially not him? He addressed Morrow. "You treated Sir Reginald for night terrors?" The doctor nodded, pale. "Laudanum, mostly. He claimed Eleanor spoke through the walls, begged him to join her. And the heart in the nursery?" Morrow hesitated. "Not human. Pig's heart, I'd swear. Fresh from the butcher." Poirot filed that away. He turned to the group. "We search the attic, now, together." They climbed the main staircase, then a narrower flight behind a tapestry. The attic was a warren of trunks and shrouded furniture, the air thick with dust and camphor. Moonlight filtered through a dormer window, silvering the snow outside. Poirot moved methodically. He found a dressmaker's dummy draped in a wedding gown, yellowed lace, veil torn. Beside it, a crate labelled EA, private. Inside, love letters, a dried bouquet, a photograph of Eleanor Ashcombe, beautiful, auburn-haired, smiling. On the back, in faded ink, "To my darling Reggie, forever." Clarissa touched the photo. "She was my mother's cousin. Died giving birth, stillborn son." Poirot's eyes sharpened. Sir Reginald had no children, none that lived. He lifted the veil. Beneath, a stocking, white, bridal, knotted into a cradle shape. Inside, a tiny silver rattle, tarnished black. From the far corner came a soft thud. Hale swung the lantern. A trunk lid had risen an inch, then fallen. Poirot approached, revolver ready. He flung the lid open. Daphne Snow lay inside, bound and gagged, eyes wide with terror. Her left hand was wrapped in blood-soaked linen. The little finger was missing. A camera hung around her neck, lens shattered. Poirot cut her bonds. She collapsed against him, sobbing. He made me photograph it. The finger said it was art." "Who?" Hale demanded. She shook her head. "Masked, black wool, voice muffled, smelled of chemicals." Poirot supported her to a chair. "The darkroom?" she nodded. "Dragged me through the tunnel. There's a chamber. Old mine office. Lanterns, developing trays. He cut it while I watched. Said the next would be my tongue if I screamed." Poirot examined the camera. The film had been removed. He turned to the group. "The killer has a studio. We find it." They descended. In the entrance hall, the Christmas tree lights flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the manor. A match flared. Mrs. Finch lit a candle. In its glow, the stockings on the picture rail had multiplied. 10 now. The new one, embroidered DS, dripped slow, steady drops onto the parquet. Poirot approached. Inside, a photographic plate cracked diagonally. When held to the candle, it revealed a blurred image, the kitchen table, the pudding, a gloved hand sprinkling white powder. The killer had documented his own crime. Poirot's voice was steel. "Dawn is in 2 hours. We search the tunnel. Miss Snow rests. Dr. Morrow attends her. The rest, arm yourselves." He looked at the blood on the floor, then at the 8 faces reflected in the candlelight. The pudding was meant for Sir Reginald's ritual. The killer adapts, he improvises, but improvisation leaves traces. Outside, the snow had stopped. The moors lay white and still, waiting. Poirot tucked the cracked plate into his pocket. Somewhere in the dark, a shutter clicked again, soft, deliberate. The Christmas stocking killer was developing his next exposure. And the manor, Poirot reflected, was running out of light. Chapter 7. Secrets in the Attic dawn came late to Frostmere, a sullen grey smear behind the snow-laden pine. At 6:12 a.m. on Christmas Eve, Poirot led the expedition through the chapel crypt and into the tunnel. The iron bars he had wedged across the panel the night before lay twisted on the stone floor, metal sheared as cleanly as butter. Someone had used bolt cutters, or inhuman strength. They moved single file, Poirot first, lantern high, Hale with the revolver, the Reverend clutching a brass candlestick like a mace, Wren still pale from strychnine, supported by Mrs. Finch. Clarissa and Lady Sylvia brought up the rear, each clutching a stocking as though it were a talisman. Daphne Snow remained abed under Dr. Morrow's care, her maimed hand swathed in gauze. The tunnel was older than the house, hewn by Elizabethan miners chasing coal seams. Timber props sagged under centuries of damp. Icicles hung from the ceiling like stalactites in a frozen cathedral. Their breath plumed white. Every footstep echoed, doubled, redoubled, until the passage seemed alive with ghosts. After 200 yards, the tunnel widened into a chamber, once the mine office. A deal table stood beneath a lantern hook. On it, developing trays, bottles of hypo, a red safe-light bulb. Photographs pegged to a clothesline fluttered in the draught. Sir Reginald's corpse dangling, Wren retching over the basin, Daphne's severed finger held aloft by gloved fingers. Each image was stamped in the corner with a tiny holly leaf. Poirot's moustache bristled. "A dark room in the bowels of the earth. Our killer is an artist of death." He examined the trays. The fixer still steamed, freshly used. On the floor, footprints in coal dust, 2 sets, one booted, size 10, Hale's size, the other bare small toes splayed, Clarissa's. Clarissa saw his glance. "I've never been here," she whispered. Poirot lifted a photograph from the line. It showed the attic trunk, open, empty, the wedding gown draped like a shroud. On the back, in crimson ink, "The bride returns at midnight. Bring the rattle." He pocketed it. "We ascend, the attic again, but by the main stairs. No more tunnels." They retraced their steps. In the chapel, the coffin lid had been shifted. Someone had placed a single red stocking inside, knotted around Sir Reginald's cold fingers. The wool was damp, melted snow. Hale swore, "He's been back!" Poirot sealed the coffin with wax from the altar candles. The dead must wait. The living are in peril. They climbed to the attic. Sunlight now filtered through the dormer, weak but honest. The trunk stood open as before. The wedding gown had been arranged on the dummy in a pose of supplication. Arms outstretched, veil lifted as though to kiss an invisible groom. On the floorboards, a circle of salt. Within it, the silver rattle, and a new stocking, white this time, embroidered with a tiny cradle. Inside, a lock of auburn hair, longer than Daphne's, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Lady Sylvia touched it. "Eleanor's," she said faintly, "from her wedding day." Poirot knelt. The salt was fresh, kitchen salt, coarse. He brushed it aside. Beneath, the floorboards had been pried up. A cavity revealed a leather-bound journal, cover cracked with age. The flyleaf read, "Diary of Eleanor Ashcombe, 1919–1922. He opened it at random. 15th of March, 1922. Reggie insists the child is not his. The midwife swears otherwise, but he will not listen. He locks me in the east wing for my health. The walls weep. I hear digging beneath. Night after night. He says it is the mine settling. I know better." Poirot's eyes blazed. He flipped to the final entry, dated 23rd of December, 1922. The pains began at vespers. Reggie sent the doctor away. Said Morrow would attend. Morrow gave me laudanum too much. I saw the cradle prepared, but no child came. Reggie wept. Then the digging stopped. I woke in the crypt, alone. The lid closed. I screamed until my throat bled. No one came. If you read this, tell my son I loved him. Tell Reggie the mine took us both. The page was stained with tears, or blood. Clarissa's hand flew to her mouth. She was buried alive? Poirot closed the journal. Premature burial, a nightmare of the laudanum age. Sir Reginald believed her dead. Perhaps Morrow convinced him, but the child, he stood. The rattle, the hair, the cradle stocking. Someone knows the truth of that night. From the eaves came a soft clinking. Hale swung the lantern. A mobile of silver spoons, baby spoons, hung from a beam turning slowly. Each was engraved with a date, 1920, 1921, 1922, and 1923. Poirot counted. 9 spoons, 9 pregnancies, or 9 children. Mrs. Finch crossed herself. There were rumours. Maids dismissed, cradles ordered, then burned. Poirot moved to the dummy. The wedding gown's hem had been lifted, revealing boots, men's boots, caked with coal dust. Size 10. He lifted one. Inside, a red woolen thread caught in the lace. Hale's boots. But Hale stood beside him, wearing carpet slippers. "Someone borrows your footwear, Captain," Poirot said softly. Hale's face darkened. "I left them in the boot room last night. Anyone could—" A scream from below, Mrs. Finch's voice raw with terror. They ran. On the landing, the housekeeper stood before a door none had noticed before. Narrow, painted the same grey as the wall. It stood ajar. Beyond, a nursery, smaller than the one in the east wing, hidden behind a false panel. The room was a shrine to infancy lost. Cradles lined the walls, 6, 7, 8, each containing a tiny skeleton, wrapped in yellowed lace. A rocking horse, painted eye missing, stared at the door. On the mantel, a row of stockings, white, miniature, each embroidered with a single initial. E.R.E.R. Poirot's blood ran cold. Eleanor, Reginald, alternating. The child was born, many children, but none survived. He approached the nearest cradle. The bones were bird delicate, no larger than a doll's. Tag hung from the wrist, baby Ashcombe, 23 Dex 1922 stillborn. But the skull showed a fracture, clean, deliberate. Clarissa backed away. He killed them, or someone killed for him, Poirot murmured. On the rocking horse, a new stocking, scarlet, had been tied like a saddle. Inside, a tiny noose knitted from red wool and a note, "The cradle falls at noon." Merry Christmas, little mother. The clock in the corridor struck 11, then stopped. Someone had tampered with the mechanism. Poirot gathered them in the nursery. The killer reenacts the past. Sir Reginald's guilt, Eleanor's entombment, the lost children. But why now? Lady Sylvia lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. Reggie planned to open the East Wing this Christmas. Said it was time to face the ghosts. He hired Morrow to certify Eleanor's death. Natural causes. The journal disproves it. Wren cleared his throat. The will. If murder is proven, the estate reverts to the Crown. Clarissa gets nothing. Clarissa's eyes flashed. You'd profit, Mr. Wren. Legal fees for decades. The solicitor flushed. I merely administer. Poirot raised a hand. Enough. We return to the attic. The journal mentions digging. There is more beneath. They climbed again. Poirot pried up more floorboards. Beneath lay a trapdoor, iron-ringed, locked. The key from Wren's stocking fitted perfectly. The space below was a cellar, not a mine. Stone steps descended to a chamber lined with bricks. In the centre, a wooden box, coffin-sized, lid nailed shut. On it, a stocking, white, bridle, knotted in a bow. Poirot's revolver was steady. Open it. Hale and the Reverend levered the lid with the candlestick. Inside, a woman's skeleton, auburn hair still clinging to the skull, wedding gown rotted to lace. Around the neck, a red stocking, tight, garrote marks on the vertebrae. Lady Eleanor Ashcombe, buried beneath her own attic. But the skull was cracked. Frontal bone, heavy blow. Not premature burial. Murder. Clarissa wept. Lady Sylvia turned away. Poirot knelt. In the skeleton's hand, a silver locket. He opened it. Inside, a miniature photograph of a newborn, alive, eyes open. On the back, Reginald Jr., 23. Carter, 1922. He stood. The child lived. Sir Reginald hid the truth, perhaps to protect the boy, but someone knew. From the attic above came a soft rocking, steady, deliberate. They ran, the hidden nursery. The rocking horse moved on its own, back and forth, back and forth. On its saddle, the scarlet stocking now held a tiny knitted booty, stained with fresh blood. A child's cry echoed, high, thin, impossible. Poirot's face was granite. The killer has a child, or impersonates one. Noon approaches. He looked at the 8 faces, each reflecting horror and calculation. The cradle falls, he said, but whose? Outside, the sun climbed toward its zenith, weak behind the clouds. Somewhere in the manor, a clock began to chime, 11 strokes, then a 12th that never came. The attic held its breath. And Hercule Poirot, for the first time, felt the chill of a secret older than the house itself. Chapter 8. The Yuletide Betrayal. The hidden nursery clock had stopped at 11:59, 1 minute to noon, 1 minute to the cradle falling. Poirot stood in the centre of the room, revolver drawn, eyes flicking from face to face. The 8 survivors formed a ragged circle around the rocking horse. The scarlet booty dripped slow, deliberate drops onto the dusty floorboards, plink, 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 like a metronome counting down to catastrophe. He spoke, voice low, but carrying to every corner. Mesdames et messieurs, the killer has promised a fall at noon. We will not scatter. We will not run. We stand together, and we watch. Clarissa's breath hitched. There's a child, a real child, the cry. Was recorded, Poirot cut in, or mimicked. The booty is pig's blood. Dr. Morrow confirmed the heart was porcine. The killer uses the abattoir as his palate. Lady Sylvia crushed her cigarette beneath her heel. Then where is the child from the locket? Reginald Jr. would be 23 now. Poirot's gaze settled on her. exactly 23 this very day. Born 23rd of December, 1922, the cradle falls on his birthday. He moved to the row of miniature cradles. 8 skeletons, 8 stockings. He lifted the tag from the newest, Baby Ashcombe, 23 deck 1922, stillborn. The ink was fresh, ballpoint, not fountain, modern. Forged, he said, like the diary's final entry. Someone wishes us to believe in a dynasty of death. Hale's knuckles were white on the revolver. The tunnel, the darkroom, someone's been living down there. Poirot nodded. Living, planning, watching. The photographs prove it. He drew the cracked plate from his pocket. The pudding, the gloved hand. But gloves hide fingerprints. We need the negative. He turned to Daphne Snow, who had been brought down from her sickbed, left hand swaddled, face chalk white. Mademoiselle, the film you shot in the chapel. Where is the spool? She shook her head. He took everything, left only the broken lens. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet you developed the East Wing negative. Where is that spool? In the dark room, hidden behind the hypo bottle. Poirot snapped his fingers. Captain Hale, Mr. Bresren, accompany me. The rest remain here. Mrs. Finch, lock the door behind us. Admit no one. They descended through the chapel crypt. The tunnel air was colder now. Their lanterns threw long, twitching shadows. At the mine office, the developing trays were dry, the clothesline bare. But the safe light bulb glowed. Someone had been here minutes ago. Poirot knelt. In the coal dust, fresh prints, booted, size 10, leading to a side passage none had noticed before. It sloped downward, timbered with fresh pit props, recent work. Hale whispered, "The old cage shaft goes." To the river level, they followed. The passage narrowed, their shoulders brushed the walls. After 50 yards, it opened into a cavernous space. The original shaft, now a frozen cathedral of ice. A cage, rusted iron, big enough for a pony, hung on chains over a black void. Snow had drifted through a ventilation grate high above, forming a white hillock beneath. On the cage floor, a spool of film, a red stocking, and a child's wooden toy, hand-carved, painted with a crude face. A tag dangled, "For my birthday, light the tree." Poirot lifted the spool. 35 mm. The stocking contained a single frame cut from the roll, the east wing window, the white figure. But now the face was visible. Clarissa, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. The photograph had been staged. Hale's breath clouded. He's been posing her. Poirot's mind raced. Clarissa in the window. When? Last night. Drugged. The laudanum phial in Morrow's stocking, half empty. They returned at a run. In the attic, chaos. Mrs. Finch lay unconscious, keys scattered. The nursery door stood open. Inside, the rocking horse was still, the cradle's empty, the skeleton's gone. Only the scarlet booty remained, now pinned to the wall with a darning needle. A gramophone in the corner spun, needle scratching, a child's voice distorted, singing Rockabye Baby. The record label, Home Recording, 1922. Poirot lifted the needle. Silence crashed in. Clarissa was missing. Lady Sylvia's voice shook. She was here. Then the lights flickered. When they came back, she was gone. Poirot's face was thunder. The tree! The note said light the tree. They thundered downstairs. The entrance hall Christmas tree stood dark, bulbs cold. At its base, a new present, wrapped in white lace, tied with red wool. A tag, Clarissa Vale, open at noon. The grandfather clock began to chime. 12 slow strokes. Hale levelled the revolver. Stand back. Poirot knelt, ear to the parcel. A faint ticking, mechanical, not a bomb. He slit the lace with his penknife. Inside, a music box lid painted with a cradle. He wound it. The tune was Rockabye Baby. When it opened, a tiny figure popped up. Clarissa's face, photographed, pasted onto a doll. Beneath, a note. The heiress sleeps with the babies. Find her before the tree lights, or she joins them. The tree bulbs flickered once, then blazed. Every light in the manor surged, then died. Darkness, a scream Clarissa's, echoed from above. They ran, the east wing, Lady Eleanor's bedroom. The door was locked. Hale shot the bolt. Inside, Clarissa lay on the four-poster, bound with red stockings, mouth gagged. Her eyes were open, pupils pinpricks, drugged. On her chest, a white cradle stocking, embroidered CV plus RA Jr. Poirot cut her free. She gasped, "He said he's my brother," said Uncle Reggie hid him in the mine, that I stole his birthright. Hale's face was stone. Reginald Jr. alive? Poirot's mind whirled. The Chine diary, the locket, the skeletons, props. But the child in the locket was real. Where had he been raised? Clarissa clutched Poirot's sleeve. "He wore your boots, Captain, and Dr. Morrow's coat. He smelled of the dark room." They carried her to the morning room. Mrs. Finch revived with brandy. The group reassembled, minus Daphne, still abed, and Dr. Morrow, who had vanished. Poirot stood before the fire. "The killer is one of us. He has played many roles: ghost, child, photographer, heir. But the boots, size 10, are Captain Hale's, the coat, Dr. Morrow's, the darkroom, Daphne's key. Someone borrows identities like costumes." He drew the film spool. "This holds the truth. We develop it now." They returned to the tunnel darkroom. Poirot worked with swift precision, developer, stop bath, fixer. The negative emerged, frame by frame. First, Clarissa in the east window, eyes closed, drugged, posed. Second, Dr. Morrow in the nursery, wrists already slashed, a gloved hand holding the mirror shard. Third, Sir Reginald outside in the snow, stocking around his neck, alive, eyes wide with terror. The killer's shadow fell across him, tall, broad-shouldered. Fourth, the pudding, the gloved hand, wool visible at the cuff, red wool, the final frame, the attic, the open trunk. A figure in black, face masked with a stocking, holding the diary. The mask slipped, just enough. A birthmark, port wine, on the left cheek. The Reverend Peregrine Goodbody. Poirot's voice was soft. "Monsieur le Curé, you have been busy." They turned. Goodbody stood in the doorway, candlestick raised, eyes wild. "The boy lived," he spat. "I delivered him, pulled him from Eleanor's womb, while Morrow declared her dead. Reggie paid me to bury the truth. I raised the child in the village, told him his father abandoned him. When Reggie planned to confess this Christmas, give the boy the manor, I had to stop it." Hale levelled the revolver. "You murdered Reggie." Goodbody laughed, a broken sound. "He begged me, said the ghosts were real. I gave him laudanum, walked him to the snow, hanged him with his own stocking. The heart, the finger, stage dressing, to make you chase phantoms." Clarissa whispered, "And the babies." "Mine," Goodbody said, "with village girls. Sacrificed to the mine god. Payment for my silence. Reggie never knew." Poirot stepped forward. "The diary? Forged. The real one burned years ago. I kept the locket. Proof." He lunged. Hale fired. The candlestick spun away. Goodbody crumpled, blood blooming on his cassock. Poirot knelt. "Where is the boy now?" Goodbody smiled through red teeth. "In the cage, waiting for his birthday gift." They ran, the shaft. The cage hung empty, chains cut. Below, in the void, a child's voice sang, "Rock-a-bye baby," fading into darkness. The tree lights flickered once more, then died forever. Poirot stared into the abyss. The cradle had fallen, and, adieu, the Yuletide betrayal was complete. Chapter 9. Gathering in the parlour. The parlour had become a tribunal. At 3:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the fire roared like a caged lion. throwing orange light across the faces of the 8 survivors. The Christmas tree stood dark, its bulbs shattered by the power surge. Stockings, 8 now, hung from the mantel like flayed skins. Outside, the snow had begun again, soft and relentless, sealing Frostmere in a white sarcophagus. Poirot stood beneath the chandelier that had once held Sir Reginald's corpse. His waistcoat was unbuttoned, tie askew, marks of a man who had chased ghosts through tunnels and attics for 12 hours. The revolver lay on the table beside a silver tray. The diary, the locket, the film spool, the red beads, the cracked photographic plate, the tiny noose, the severed finger wrapped in gauze. Evidence, arrayed like a macabre advent calendar. He spoke, voice calm but edged with steel. Mesdames et messieurs, the pieces are assembled. The picture is complete. But one question remains. Who lowered the cage? The Reverend Goodbody is wounded, not dead. He cannot have climbed the shaft alone. Someone cut the chains after he fell. Someone ensured the boy, Reginald Ashcombe Jr., vanished into the river level. We gather now to unmask the final traitor. Captain Hale, revolver in hand, guarded the door. Dr. Morrow sat apart, wrists bandaged, eyes hollow. Daphne Snow cradled her maimed hand, camera destroyed. Clarissa Vale, still pale from laudanum, clutched the locket. Lady Sylvia smoked incessantly. Mr. Wren adjusted his pince-nez, lips bloodless. Mrs. Finch stood by the bell-pull, keys silent for once. Poirot began with the timeline, voice measured. 23rd of December, 11 p.m. Sir Reginald takes laudanum from Dr. Morrow in the library. 11:45 p.m. Lady Sylvia leaves him. 12:15 a.m. Clarissa refuses a pill. 12:30 a.m. Captain Hale and the Reverend play billiards. 1:00 a.m. Daphne develops in the laundry darkroom. 1:15 a.m. Mrs. Finch locks the kitchen. 3:00 a.m. Sleigh bells heard. 4:00 a.m. Sir Reginald found hanged. He lifted the film spool. These images prove the killer had access to the East Wing, the tunnel, the darkroom, and Hale's boots. But the cage chains were cut with bolt cutters from the stables. Tool marks matched the ones used on the crypt bars. Someone planned 2 escapes. He turned to Morrow. Doctor, you declared Eleanor dead in 1922. You signed the certificate. Morrow's voice was a croak. Reggie begged me. The child was healthy. He wanted no scandal. I gave her laudanum to ease the birth. She stopped breathing. I thought, you thought wrong, Poirot snapped. The diary proves she woke in the coffin. You buried her alive. Morrow buried his face in his hands. Poirot moved to Goodbody's empty chair. The Reverend delivered the child, hid him, raised him on lies. He forged the diary, staged the skeletons, pig bones, rabbit bones, painted with varnish. He cut Daphne's finger to terrorize us. But he needed a partner. Someone to move the cage, to light the tree, to drug Clarissa. He lifted the red bead necklace, strung now on wool. 9 beads, 9 victims intended. Sir Reginald, Dr. Morrow, staged suicide. Daphne's finger, Wren's pudding, Clarissa in the cradle. 4 more to fall. But the boy, Reginald Jr., was the prize. Goodbody promised him the manor. Someone ensured he escaped. Clarissa's voice trembled. He said he was my brother. That Uncle Reggie sent him away because of me. Poirot's eyes softened. A lie to divide you. The real heir was a weapon. He turned to Hale. Captain, your boots were worn by the killer. You were seen in the billiard room until 12:30. But the sleigh bells at 3 a.m. You keep the stable keys? Hale's jaw clenched. I was asleep. Anyone could have taken them. Poirot lifted the cracked plate. The pudding, the gloved hand. Red wool at the cuff. Mrs. Finch, you knit the stockings. She nodded, eyes wide. Sir Reginald's orders. Scarlet wool from the village. Poirot faced Wren. The will. You knew of the codicil disinheriting Clarissa. Wren swallowed. I drafted it. Sir Reginald feared Hale's debts would ruin the estate. Hale surged forward. You profited either way. Silence! Poirot's voice cracked. The tree lights. Only someone with access to the fuse box could surge the current. The box is in the cellar, locked. Mrs. Finch has the key, the housekeeper gasped. I never... Poirot lifted a key from his pocket, the brass one from Wren's stocking. This opens the estate safe, but it also fits the cellar fuse box. Someone swapped keys. He moved to Daphne. Mademoiselle, your camera. The shutter sound in the tunnel. Was it yours? She shook her head. Mine was smashed. He used another. Poirot lifted the toy from the cage. A wooden face, hand-carved. This is new. Pine, fresh cut. The estate carpenter was dismissed in 23. Who carves now? Lady Sylvia stubbed out her cigarette. I do, for the village fete, but I haven't. Poirot's eyes blazed. You were Eleanor's sister. You knew the child lived. She laughed brittle. I knew nothing. Reggie shut me out. Poirot lifted the locket photograph. This boy, look at the eyes, green like Clarissa's, but the jaw, he held it beside Hale. Like yours, Captain. Hale went white. Impossible. Poirot's voice was soft. In 1922, you were 20, a guardsman on leave. Eleanor wrote letters, destroyed, but one survived. He drew a fragment from his pocket. Rupert came to the manor. Reggie was away. The child is ours. Clarissa gasped. Hale staggered. Poirot continued. You returned after the war, indebted. Sir Reginald lent money, out of guilt. You courted Clarissa to control the estate. But Goodbody found the letter, blackmailed you. You became his accomplice. Hale's hand went to the revolver. Lies! Poirot lifted the film negative. The final frame. Goodbody masked, birthmark visible. But in the background, a reflection in a mirror. Hale, holding the camera. The partner? Poirot said. You cut the cage chains. You drugged Clarissa. You lit the tree to signal the boy's escape. Hale raised the revolver. The boy is mine, my son. The manor is his. Clarissa stepped forward. He's my brother. Poirot's voice was ice. He is a pawn. Goodbody used him to punish Sir Reginald. You used him to steal an inheritance. Hale's eyes darted. The door was guarded, the windows snow-blocked. Poirot stepped closer. The bolt cutters, in the stables, your fingerprints. Hale lunged. Poirot sidestepped. Hale's momentum carried him into the Christmas tree. It crashed, ornaments shattering. Hale fired, wild. The bullet buried in the ceiling. Mrs. Finch screamed. Wren tackled Hale from behind. The revolver skittered across the parquet. Poirot retrieved it. Captain Rupert Hale, you are under arrest for conspiracy to murder. Hale laughed, broken. The boy's gone, down the river. You'll never find him. Poirot's eyes were winter. We will follow the tunnel to the river. The boy will be found, and Goodbody will confess. He turned to the group. The stockings told the story. Each clue pointed to guilt shared. But the final betrayal was yours, Captain. You hanged your friend, you maimed a girl. You drugged your own daughter. Clarissa wept silently. Lady Sylvia lit another cigarette. And Eleanor? Poirot lifted the diary. Buried alive by Moreau's error, hidden by Goodbody's greed, exploited by Hale's ambition. The cradle fell long ago. He looked at the clock. 4:15 p.m. Outside, the snow eased. In the distance, the sound of bells, sleigh bells, approaching. The ploughs, Mrs. Finch whispered. The village. Poirot nodded. The authorities come. The manor's secrets end today. He gathered the evidence. The parlour fire settled into embers. The Christmas stocking killer was unmasked, but the boy, the true heir, had vanished into the white, and somewhere in the tunnels a child's voice still sang. Chapter 10. The Killer Unmasked. The parlour clock struck 5 as the first police sleigh crunched up the drive, bells jangling like a funeral march. Snow had ceased. The moors lay glazed and still, the sky a cold pewter. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard stepped down first, muffled, red-nosed, eyes sharp beneath the brim of his bowler. Behind him, 2 constables hauled a St. Bernard with a lantern strapped to its collar. Poirot met them at the porte-cochere, immaculate again. Fresh waistcoat, tie-pin gleaming, revolver surrendered to Hale's wrists in cuffs forged from the chandelier chain. The captain stood between constables, face bruised, eyes defiant. Dr. Morrow sat shackled to a chair in the morning room. The Reverend Goodbody, bandaged and delirious, lay under guard in the billiard room. Japp clapped Poirot on the shoulder. "Heard you had a busy Christmas, old cock. Wires are down, but the village bobby got a rider through. Said something about stockings and a hanging baronet." Poirot's moustache curled. "More than one stocking, mon ami. Come." He led them inside. The entrance hall was a crime scene. Chalk outlines where Sir Reginald had dangled, blood drops from Daphne's finger frozen into rubies on the parquet. The Christmas tree lay on its side, ornaments ground to glitter. The 8 stockings hung limp, emptied of their horrors. Japp whistled. "Looks like Jack Frost went berserk." Poirot gathered the survivors in the parlour. The fire had been banked. The room smelled of pine, gunpowder, and fear. Clarissa sat wrapped in a blanket, eyes swollen. Daphne's bandaged hand rested on her knee. Lady Sylvia smoked her last cigarette. Wren clutched the will like a hymnal. Mrs. Finch stood at attention, Keyes finally silent. Poirot addressed Japp. "The case is closed, but one thread remains. The boy, Reginald Ashcombe Jr., 23 today, raised in secret, manipulated by Goodbody, betrayed by Hale. He fled down the river level at noon. We must find him before exposure claims him." Japp nodded to the constables. "Dogs?" "Already on the scent." Poirot produced the wooden toy from the cage. His birthday gift, carved by his father, Captain Hale. They moved to the chapel crypt. The tunnel panels stood open, lanterns bobbed ahead. The St. Bernard bounded forward, nose to the ground. The party followed, Poirot, Japp, Hale in irons, Clarissa supported by Mrs. Finch. The air grew colder, wetter, water dripped from the ceiling like slow tears. After 300 yards the tunnel forked. Left led to the darkroom, now stripped bare. Right sloped sharply downward, timbering new and sturdy. The dog strained toward the right. "Recent work," Japp grunted. "Someone planned an exit." The passage ended at a rust-eaten grate. Beyond, the river black, half-frozen, rushing between ice shelves. Footprints led to the water's edge, small, bare, then gone. A child's mitten, red wool, floated in an eddy caught on a branch. Clarissa sobbed. "He's drowned!" Poirot knelt. The ice was thin. Beneath, something pale moved. He smashed the surface with the revolver butt. A hand broke through, small, blue with cold. The boy. They hauled him out. Reginald Jr. was slight, auburn-haired like Eleanor, eyes green like Clarissa's. He wore a miner's jacket 3 sizes too large, boots laced with red wool. His lips were purple, but he breathed shallow, ragged. Japp wrapped him in a constable's coat. Alive, barely. Poirot examined the boy's hands. Ink stains, chemical burns, darkroom work. On his wrist, a faint scar, mirror shard self-inflicted under duress. Goodbody's final cruelty. Clarissa knelt, tears freezing on her cheeks, I'm your sister." The boy's eyes flickered open. "He said you stole my name." Poirot's voice was gentle. "No one stole. Your father, Captain Hale, hid you. Goodbody twisted you. But you are Ashcombe. The manor is yours." They carried him back. In the chapel, Dr. Morrow examined him. Hypothermia, exhaustion, laudanum traces. "He'll live," the doctor said bitterly. "I taught him the dose." Upstairs, the parlour became a courtroom. Japp took statements. Goodbody, propped on cushions, confessed in a fevered rush. The forged diary, the pig bones, the staged suicides, the photographs to terrorise. Hale admitted the boots, the tree surge, the cage chains, done to secure his son's future. Morrow confessed the premature burial, the lies for gold. Poirot stood before the fire, evidence laid out like a hand of cards. "The stockings were the key," he said. "Each contained a truth and a lie. The feather, Eleanor's ghost. The cartridge, Hale's debt. The laudanum, Morrow's complicity. The key, the fuse box, the negative, the reflection, the bone, Goodbody's relics. The mistletoe, Mrs. Finch's innocence. The threat, Clarissa's fear. And mine." He lifted his own stocking, still bulging. "A knight, chess. The killer moved me like a piece." He opened it. Inside, a tiny chess piece, knight, carved from coal. On the base, etched, "Your move, Poirot." Japp chuckled. "He wanted you here." "Précisément. Sir Reginald's invitation, written by Goodbody, using the baronet's seal. He needed Poirot to legitimise the terror, to make the heir's claim undeniable when the others were dead or discredited." Clarissa asked, "And the boy? Will recover?" "The will is void. Murder forfeits inheritance. The estate passes to Clarissa, then to Reginald Jr. as joint heirs. The trust for veterans remains." Hale lunged against his cuffs. "He's my son!" Poirot's eyes were steel. "You hanged his father. You maimed an innocent. You do not deserve him." Night fell. The police sleighs departed, prisoners aboard. The manor's lights flickered once, then held steady. Power restored from the village generator. Poirot stood alone in the entrance hall. The Christmas tree lay broken, but one ornament remained intact, a glass icicle catching the firelight. He hung it on a single branch still standing. Clarissa joined him, the boy asleep upstairs under Mrs. Finch's care. "What happens now?" Poirot smiled, the first genuine smile in days. "Now, mademoiselle, we celebrate Christmas, a small one, chocolate shawd, carols, real ones, and tomorrow the east wing opens to the sun." He lifted the locket, placed it in her hand. "Your mother watches. Your brother lives. The cradle did not fall, it rose." Outside the snow began to melt. Drips from the eaves sounded like tiny bells. In the parlour, Mrs. Finch hung a single stocking, white, new, embroidered RAJ and CV. She filled it with oranges, a silver rattle, and a note in Poirot's neat hand. "Joyeux Noël." The grey cells prevail. Poirot raised his cup, to absent friends, and to secrets buried no more. They drank, the fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, a clock struck 6, true this time, no discord. The Christmas stocking killer was unmasked, chained and gone, and Frostmere Manor, for the first time in a century, slept in peace.